Hi, guys. Thank you for joining me this week for another fun-filled episode of Excuse Me. I'm your host, Shaun Philip Naylor, and I am excited for today's show. But as always, I'd like to start off with a little gratitude. Thanks to all of you lovely regular listeners for tuning in once again, and a massive hello and welcome to anyone who's tuning in for the first time. Welcome to the Excuse Me family. We're so happy to have you here. If you like what you hear, please rate and review the show, and don't forget to subscribe. Now, on with the show. Today, I am so excited to introduce you all to the always lovely and incredibly inspiring Terry Hawkins. Terry is an accomplished businesswoman and a business consultant, a best-selling author, and Terry is a retail specialist and education architect, and the custodian and navigator of her newest venture, Ignite Worldwide. Terry, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm glad I was sitting down to read that. I almost lost my breath. You've accomplished a lot. But I guess it must be really amazing to look back at everything that you've achieved in your life and career. But can you maybe start by sharing with the listeners a little bit about yourself? Who is Terry?
Wow, that's a big question. It's so funny you say look back on your life, because I always used to make the joke that life only made sense when you stopped and looked back, because if you stand still and look forward, freaks the hell out of you. So it's like, what am I doing? Where am I going? It's been, obviously it's been a very, very long career and long journey, and not to waste, too much time just on, my story, but, grew up in a very challenging family experience, I suppose. Had a lot of, I hate to do the drama around it, but lots of abuse, lots of very violent family, poverty, all that sort of stuff. Had physical, warts all over my body and over my face, and, grew up with that. I had eating disorder, I mean, honestly, if you could line it all up, you go, really? It's like I was a dartboard and I was right in the middle.
Oh,
and so,
poor thing.
And I think people also, have such an attachment to their story. Whereas, I was lucky enough, I was just saying to a girlfriend, and the topic today is, of course, the 7-year cycles. And I was just talking about, the advice I would give to 21 to 28-year-olds. And I was so fortunate that I actually fell into education and development unwittingly from 21 to 28. And that actually really influenced my life. So I got into education and training when I was, a baby, like 20, 21, didn't know what I was doing. I worked in retail, in fashion retail for about 7 years, came from the floor, worked in national roles, then became, national training manager. I created a lot of my own content. And then I went and started my own company in 1989. So People in Progress, I had that for 27 years. And then I decided to get a business partner 5 years ago. That went down the path of the technology side. And that's just recently finished. And so here I am today, and I've got Ignite Worldwide, which I'm very excited about. But it's still the same, it's the same but different. And so, but that's me.
Okay, so while we're talking about Ignite Worldwide, can you tell us a little bit about it, what you're hoping to achieve with it? And I guess another great question is, why would you call yourself a custodian and navigator of Ignite Worldwide?
Great question. So I'll start with that last bit first, and then work back. So custodian and navigator. So because I've spent, over 3 decades in the education industry, and my past, the reason I shared my past a little bit was because I hope this doesn't offend anybody, but we have been a male-driven world. It's for 2,000 years, if you go back to the, ancient times of the pyramids and so forth, it's been a very, very cognitive-driven world. And so I'm so grateful to my past, because I took a lot of that. And I think what a lot of us bring through our life is our experience. And we've been cognitively led for 2,000 years. And I think Einstein said so beautifully, one of the saddest days on the planet was when we valued intelligence over intuition.
Wow.
And so I have always been intuitively led. And what we're supposed to do is, lead intuitively and then bring it up into the cognitive to make sense of it. And so I was able to take all of the learnings that I had in those early years, all of the learnings that I got when I was very young, in my early 20s. And I was able to then seed that through. So sorry. I was able to seed that through. Oh, it's you, get off. And so it's a joke. You know me, I love a good joke. And so I was able to then seed that personal growth element into business and corporate education and had phenomenal results. And so if you look at the male, and it's not just men, I want to be really specific, it's not just men, it's masculine. Because I know there are women, like often a lot of people say to me, I'm quite masculine, like I'm a real tomboy. So I'm a boy girl, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then you got girls, and then you got girl boys, and then you got boys, the height alpha male. So I believe, if you look back on our history, everything's army war time. Yeah. CEO, general manager, chief this, chief that, and I hated that. And there was a great book written many, many years ago called Blue Water Strategy. And it was all about leaving the shores and going into the blue deep waters to discover new ways and to be an explorer, rather than the red bloodbath of the way business usually is, which is competitive. I've got to kill my competitor. It's dog eat dog. There's not enough room. It's a scarcity based model. And I've always believed that, there's enough for everybody. Curiosity is our greatest captain. So, when I was able to, I got this answer, when I was able to start again, and it was hard, I had to start right from square one again. And I thought Ignite, because one of the things I love about the education that we do, and when I speak and whatever it might be, is the whole goal is to ignite that human spirit. So.
Oh, I love that. Beautiful. That's amazing. So with Ignite, I guess just while we're talking about it, I don't know how it works, if you're taking on clients or anything, but if anybody is, I guess, intrigued by what Ignite Worldwide is, how would they get in touch with you, or where can they follow to follow your journey there?
Oh gosh, I love this, right up in front. We're getting the phone numbers at the beginning of the date. I think it's fantastic.
I love it.
And one of the things I loved about you too is when you said, and here's a bit of gratitude, because I'd love to speak to that today too. And I think we live in a world where people are falsely spiritual when it comes to gratitude, yet they want free content. And I'm just about to launch an article on it. But they want free content, and yet we feel a little bit of embarrassed to go, could you follow me? Could you like? Could you share? Yeah. Where in actual fact, it's an energy exchange. So I love you for that. Thank you. So it's just Ignite-Worldwide. Ignite-Worldwide. There's an amazing company called Ignite Worldwide for girls technology, which we're not, but ignite-worldwide.com. And it's just, my email is just terry@terryhawkins.com. And our email is curiosity@ignite-worldwide.com.
I love it. I'll put the links to your socials and your website into the show notes as well. So anybody watching or listening who wants to, I guess, get better acquainted with Ignite Worldwide, just click on the links that will be in the notes for all of you. Terry, you and we first connected a little over a year ago when the company that I still work for, embraced one of your older, I guess, programs. One of those retail initiatives to, I guess, help people become better salespeople. And I've done a few of them in my time in retail. I've been working in retail since I was 16 years old, pretty much, with a short step away into hospitality. And then I went back to retail because I do enjoy it. I love it. But yeah, I've done so many of those different ones that companies produce, and, online trainings and things for people to watch videos and learn. And I'm not going to lie, I had some preconceived thoughts when I was told that it was something that I had to do with the company. What I'm trying to say is, with you at the helm, you're very engaging, and I don't want to say that you made that learning fun, but you definitely did. And you brought a real freshness to, I guess, to revitalize my own energies within that sector. So but I just want to say thank you for not being one of those straight down the line, boring people. You're so relatable. And imagine how
Slide
excited
143.
Yeah. And imagine how excited I was when I did a learning with them, and I wasn't expecting to jump on a Zoom and have you there. So I'm really grateful for that connection and being able to, I guess,
Me too.
use that connection to have a better conversation, a bigger conversation. You know, taking that experience of working in retail and learning retail, and then you spoke to something that really spoke to me. You know, we obviously, you cover a lot of ground in those training sessions, and it was in the Zoom, like the one-on-one education. Obviously, we would have seen you in person if it wasn't a COVID world that we were living in at the time. But one of the things that you really spoke to is what we're going to talk about today, which is the 7-year cycles. I guess it was more the human aspect. And I was going through something personally in my personal life with my husband, which sort of, when you started talking to 7-year cycles and the timeframes of which they are in our lives, it really just put all the pieces into place as to where my husband was at and where I was at. And there is an 8-year difference between the two of us. So we're always, I guess, almost always going to be at different points in those 7-year cycles within our lives, which will make, I guess, any relationship challenging. Now, enough of me rambling about my
that was
life.
so good.
But yeah, can you start off just by explaining a little bit about what the 7-year cycles actually are, what it means?
Absolutely. And I think one of the things too, just to frame it well and to give context, because, you know, there's so many education systems that I've created, and that's basically what I do, is create an entire system for an organization. And then we have various trainers and so forth that also facilitate. What we do when we come into anything is bring our self. And that self has so many dynamics. So there's horizontal typology and then there's vertical typology. So horizontal, imagine a line if you're listening to this, and then vertical typology, a line going upwards. And so, or vertical experience, I should say. Horizontal typology is flat. So everyone does profilers, and it doesn't, you know, the main one that, you know, you see a lot of these days is the Myers-Briggs type indicator, which stems from, you know, it first started out, I think it was Hippocrates, and then it was Plato, and Jung did some work. And I think Jung just divided it into the 16 PF, and then it moved further into it. And then, you know, the Myers-Briggs mother-daughter team then turned it into the MBTI. So MBTI is just one profiler. But what people do is they identify with one thing. So personal awareness and self-awareness is not a one-stop shop. There are hundreds of different profilers, and the 7-year cycles is just one slice of that. And then inside of that, we have the vertical experience, and that is the spiral dynamic of who you are as you journey up into your life. Yeah, we go up to the stair, you know, up the staircase of life. Yeah. If you can do one thing, I think, in the world for yourself and for others, is to be self-aware. And self-awareness on the ladder of, and I'm using ancient wisdom here, self-awareness on the ladder of awareness is about 4th along. So we have, and the reason I'm saying this is because people will bring their own bias as they listen to this. They'll go, oh, no, that's not right, or I don't have any personal problems, or, you know, and you just said you had a situation in your personal life. Now, people will hear that based on their own reality. They won't hear what you actually said. They're going to hear what they said based on all those filters. So I'm just, my brain, honestly, I have so many things come in and I go, how long have we got? How long are we doing this for?
I was giving us an hour, but we can go as long as you want.
Oh, we could do part B.
We could do 2 parts.
We'll do a trilogy. We didn't mean it to be 17 hours long.
Hey, look, that's happened before on the show.
Oh, I love it. So the 7-year cycles, and sorry, self-awareness, that's right, the ladder of awareness. So we have no awareness. So you don't know, you know, we know all the catchphrase, and it's getting scarier as we go along. We know all the catchphrase, like, you don't know what you don't know, you know, but it's true. You are literally blind on every level when you have no awareness. So you have no awareness, then you have awareness. So all of a sudden, and that's usually the reticular activation system or something in the brain that a baby is totally unaware of what solids are until now. They're still not aware of what they are. It's just does that make sense? Like it's like tying a shoelace, it doesn't know. So we have no awareness, then we have awareness. From awareness, then we have growth. So we have an awareness that there's something outside of us or whatever it might be. Then we get, oh, I know, here we go. Let's say you have no awareness that you are an angry person.
Yep.
You've grown up in an angry environment. You're this. So then all of a sudden someone says to you, well, you're angry. And you go, no, I'm not. I'm not angry. And then all of a sudden someone else says it, whatever. And all of a sudden you go, I'm angry. Now you have growth. Now you go, interesting. So now you're growing. Now you still don't have self-awareness. You just have awareness. So then what happens is you start to take it on. Then you get self-awareness. Now I'm aware of myself when anger comes up. From self-awareness and owning your own anger, from that then becomes, well, now I understand and have compassion. Empathy kicks in. So empathy is 4 rungs up the ladder. And people go, we're going to learn empathy. I know. Isn't it amazing? That's 4 crazy. Rungs up the ladder. And so we have empathy. Then once I have empathy and compassion, I have unity. Now I can understand my fellow man. Now I can understand, what your experience is, and I can put myself in your shoes emotionally, not just cognitively. Then from that, then we actually can gain collective wisdom. And from collective wisdom, then we have infinite possibility. So, that's just to set this up for wherever you're at on this stage of life. The 7-year cycles may not hit right at this point because you may not like what you hear. Yeah. So if we don't like it, we're going to repel it. And the reason I say this is because I'm going to start with now. This is Rudolf Steiner. So Rudolf Steiner was one of the forefathers of the 7-year cycles. It blows my mind that we haven't actually done much of it. I share this nearly every group I go to, and people go, oh, can we do the 7-year cycle?
Because it's so interesting. It's so interesting.
Fascinating, isn't it? And you look into a crystal ball and you go, what the hell? Now, when you marry this up with Clare Graves, so Clare Graves was around the same time as Maslow, but he wasn't published. And so Maslow even says, the hierarchy of needs, Maslow even says his work was much better than his. Now, people will go, that's why I always make the joke when I go, all the great teachers of the planet, like, you've got Jesus and Krishna and, Muhammad and, all of the whatever, Mother Teresa, whatever. And people go, yeah, like they're it. And I go, no, they're the only ones that they were published. But what about all the ones that weren't published that we don't know about? So it's the same with this. So Clare Graves wasn't published. And when you do this, marry the 7-year cycles up with Clare Graves' values, mnemonic like layers, it's sort of this, it's very similar.
Yeah. Okay.
It blows my mind how it lines up. So let's dive into it. Want to?
Yeah, 100%. Let's do it.
And I've just got my, I put it up here, sorry, because I get nervous in these things, and then I just, I want to keep my brain straight. Okay. So 21 to 28, and I alluded to this before, so we have 0 to 7, 7 to 14, 14, 21, 21, 28. We'll start all the way through life, up to 84. And then 84, you start again. Now, this also links into numerology. Isn't that interesting? So we go, what? So at 84, how many 84-year-olds do you know that become this like child again? And they go, I'm going to jump out of a plane, or I'm going to stop. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So and there's that beautiful, I think it's Tennessee Williams, I'm not sure, where it says to go through the entirety of my life. I'm butchering it here. To go through the entirety of my life and to arrive back at where I began and to see it for the first time. And so I think that's what happens when we get to the end. So 0 to 7 is when our belief systems are formed. We're very much unconscious, in that space. We don't have reasoning until we're 7. And so a lot of what happened to us when we were 0 to 7, we take with us for the rest of our life, but we don't realize it. We don't realize that we have these unconscious triggers or whatever. 7 to 14, is usually like 8. It's when whatever's happening to you around 8 is when you usually anchor like your value, a main value, not values as in, trust, respect, like I was splitting up with my partner, my husband, and I remember Jackson was about 8 at the time, my youngest son. And I remember saying, anyway, he was dating someone else. And I said, oh, this could be, could get a new, could be someone else that you get to meet. And Jackson was like anti, and he goes, I'm never getting married. And I said, why? And he goes, because you just break up. And I went, oh my God, okay, I've anchored that one. So that was 0 to 14. So, and also you start to model. So you start to find models, you know, like, and unfortunately we don't have very strong adult models now for these kids. 14 to 21 is when you lose all the wiring in your brain, and you end up, you know, I think you lose about 75% of your reasoning power. Doesn't come back until you're about 24, the frontal lobe. But then we hit 21 to 28. I'm assuming that most of your audience are 21, let's say, I think you mentioned probably up to about 50 plus,
yeah.
You know, we're going to go further. So 21 to 28 are the experimental years. And don't we know that? I don't have to tell you that. So, you know, when you look back on your years, 21 to 28 is you'll try anything, you do everything to the max. You know, you party hard, you play hard, you love hard. I mean, you just do everything hard. You end up, it's quite, people will say, oh, they'll blame like a generational thing. They go, oh, millennials or whatever.
Yeah.
You know,
we've all heard that, haven't we?
I know. And it's actually, it's not, it's the 7-year cycles. And so they want to try new things, you know, that's why. It's also, if I could say, give one piece of advice to the 21 to 28-year-olds, and this verges into the next 7 years as well, but is to be the apprentice. You know, to be the apprentice. So often this age group is so busy proving that they know, because it's also a 7-year cycle of insecurity. Because now, if you sat in and dropped into apprenticeship, you're testing. So you're testing things because you want to understand your brain or your body, whatever, soul, whatever you want to call it, is trying to work out what you're actually really good at. And so you get, so be the explorer, be the apprentice, stop expecting to be good at things. You're not going to be, you're not supposed to be. And I actually see it as being a real hindrance to people, because I want to move through all of them, but because this is a huge area, this area, and 28, 35 as well. When you don't allow yourself to do the work in 21 to 28, it will come back to bite you when you're around 42. And I'll explain that shortly. Okay. Because we're in such a rush, we've got to prove it, yeah. So drop into, which I'm really, and I've done this in my programs, and I think this is probably what you were referring to before. We have feeling. We're a feeling. That's what makes us human. We have feelings, yeah? Yeah. Feelings can then, so a feeling is I call it a chemical reaction, but chemical reactions are, you know, are like on a neuro level, on a physical level, and also, you know, on an emotional level. So we have all these different chemical reactions that occur, a biochemical reaction. And so the language of expression of that is called emotion. See, so I have a feeling, a chemical reaction that then presents itself as an emotional reaction. Most of 21 to 28-year-olds, not you. If you get heat on it, I go, if it stings, let it stick. If it's true, let it be glue. And if it's wrong, let it be gone. Yeah. But if you get a bit of heat on it. So this generation, because of my generation, we stopped you feeling bad. And this is in my book, The Perfect Storm. So we said it's bad to feel bad. Now, that's just not an emotional or a philosophical viewpoint. We actually thwarted the development of your neural nets around being able to feel. So that's why when you give feedback to a 21 to 28-year-old, it is like you have whacked them across the head with a sledgehammer. You know, so people will go have stress leave because someone gave them feedback and they didn't know how to handle it. So what I do is, if I don't know how to handle it, I will hand it back to you. I'll make you responsible for how I feel, instead of going, how interesting. So this is our biggest service that we can do to this age group in this time frame, is to teach them how to drop into, and I'm doing a lot of that work in my trainings now. So, you know, they come in for, like you did, a retail training, and all of a sudden we start to teach them about the chemical reaction in their body. You understand that, then that becomes powerful. So 21 to 28-year-olds, learn how to embrace and love your feelings. Feelings, it's an emotional roller coaster. I'm sorry, emotional Ferris wheel. Yeah. No emotion was meant to make its home in your body. No emotion. No, not happy, not anxiety or anxiousness, not sadness, not anger, none of them. So 21 to 28, get to know your emotions. They're like all your children. Yeah. And they're all gorgeous. So you've got to love them all. So then when you come out of 21 to 28, so you're getting into 28, you're now starting to get a real feel for what you like, what you enjoy, what your natural talents are. And 28 to 35, 35 to 42, these are called the power years. And so 28 to 42, well, we'll just go 28, 35, is when you start to go, okay, this is good. I'm feeling really good here. Usually around 30, you get depressed because you thought you were going to be so much further along in your life. You know?
True.
Is it true?
It's so true.
I always say to people, like, I just relax. It's all right. We all have the same thing. I had a wake on my 30th. I think I was going through my first divorce, so, you know, it's all fun. And so we put so much pressure on ourselves to be somewhere or be someone at a certain point in our life. You know, we'll also say, usually what also comes up at that stage, if you're brave enough, once you come out of it, you're starting to feel confident, then life goes, smacks you in the face again. And your stuff really comes up. Now, if you do the work, then it's not going to revisit you when you're 56.
Okay, I'm hearing I've got some more work to do then. Because I feel like I'm 36, turning 37. So I feel like I'm at some sort of turning point, and the past couple of years have been really interesting. And, you know, COVID aside, just like on a personal level. And this again is why I find it so interesting, because everything that you speak of, it does ring true. If you actually sit back and you listen to it, it's like, well, yes, I did when I was 30, I did have that pressure on myself. Where am I going to be by the time I'm 30? And as we all know, time moves so quickly. And then you get to 30 and you're like, oh, well, I haven't done anything I wanted to do. And then now being that 36, 37 mark, recently married, I'm just like, kind of like, well, what happens now? I'm definitely, as I'm getting older, I'm, I guess, falling into that, what you're talking about, I guess, finding your power and doing things that I guess are more for me. So I'm doing a lot more creative things now, things that I wanted to do that were creative when I was younger, but I guess didn't have the drive, or was too concerned about what other people would think to actually go ahead and do things for myself. Even creating the podcast, it came out of a really organic a loss of a good friend to cancer. And then it's just grown and grown and grown to be this creative endeavor that forces me to have conversations like this, which most people, I guess, don't want to do that. I guess what I'm saying is I'm trying to do the work. I don't necessarily know what that means or what that looks like.
Oh, that's good.
But I'm trying and I'm listening,
What is do the work? Yeah. Yeah. I think you've just said so many amazing things. And not all of it's about our age, I think what COVID did do, because I lost everything, and not just because of COVID, also because of this, technology business that I got into, because of a mismatch there, because of, there's so many things, but, and at my age, it's very difficult to start again. It's very difficult to go. But I think the best thing that I loved about COVID, I read this, and I used to train this, I still train it, years ago. I do it with executive groups, and Daniel Pink is an incredible anthropologist. He's just the most amazing author as well. But he coined the phrase, and I'm not doing it right here, but when you take the issue of money off the table, people can do their best work. Isn't that beautiful?
Mm-hmm.
So I sat here and I thought, well, how much do I actually need? I've always made a lot of money because it's never been my driver. And so, and I've also had kids, and I've had homes, and I've had school. I've been a solo parent, so I was always chasing money. And then I sort of wrote, and I thought, I thought about what he'd said, and I thought, what do I need to keep myself happy? Outside of what everybody else thinks, outside of my postcode, outside of, or zip code if you're in America, outside of how do I look, outside of what does successful externally look like. When you just COVID got rid of all that and made us all go, what is important to you? So I don't necessarily think I feel like you're getting closer to 42, so there's the whisper, like some of the things that you're saying there are very typical of that. where you start to go, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And we'll get to that when we get to 42. But it also, and then what's doing the work look like? I think also what it is too is like doing that. And to me, doing the work is dropping into self. Doing the work is, it's so easy to blame. So, and we've all done it. I think there's a journey through that, and I do pit and flip, my pit man and flip man.
I love pit man and flip man.
Well, I love them too. And we do blame. And I think, victim, people will say, oh, you're being a victim. And I go, you're a victim when you're in the pit and it's someone else's fault all the time. But there's a difference between blaming someone and holding people accountable.
Yeah.
I think there's a very strong distinction there. And I think this is what happens in life, is that we get these sound bites. You get 12-year-olds on Instagram giving you, life advice, and you go, what the hell? Like, really? Yeah. Or they've rehearsed it, or they're reading it. And I go, do the work.
Yeah.
Do the work. Stop being, and also let's stop being bedazzled by people who sound wise. Like, I've had 15-year-olds who have floored me. I've had my kids when they're 4 or 5 have said things, and I've gone, it's been like one of those life-changing moments where you just go, whoa. So yeah, I would say you just, it's in that, all of that pot, we're in at the moment, that beautiful mix of, but I would say, what was the seed that was planted? So doing the work might be dropping into when you started your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
That gave you an insight, a clue. And it's not the presentation of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's there was something in you that had this driving force. It was like, I have this insatiable urge to, and the podcast became the vehicle for you to do that.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's all. So there could be 100 different podcasts.
Yeah.
Could be a book, could be you become an interviewer, could be that you, whatever it might be, you run travel groups. To the seed that was planted back then. That's the piece of doing the work, to find the seed, because people will say intention. What's your intention? And I think that's just I'm not sure I like that word, but anyway, does that help?
That does help. Thank you.
All right. So when we get to 28 to 35, this is when we start to consolidate what we've got from 21 to 28. Yeah. This is where we also have this free will. Like, now we're at this place where I don't feel like I have to go to people, or, you've got this looseness about you. Like, it's like, I got this. I'm feeling good about this. Yeah. Like, you get your little bit of great sass energy about you. And you want to do things on your own. So if you're an employer of people in this age group, you've got to give them their own gig, you've got to be able to, and then personality comes into all this, and temperament and whatever. But, you'll often find it'll be like that people were wanting to have their name on things, or they want to create their own this, or whatever it might be. So 28 to 35, but this is when you're entrepreneurial. This is when you're creative. This is when you're, you got your, oh, there you go. This fits perfectly for you. You've got those amazing, all those gorgeous juices just sort of pumping through your body going, you're competitive, you're driven, all those great things. Now, the other thing that occurs though, is what else happens around 28 to 30? We usually find a life partner. We usually decide, well, I love you too. Well, let's buy a house and make sure that we're, just have a mortgage for the rest of our lives. Fantastic. So we can spend the next 30 years paying it off to then die, I'm just being horrible here, but it really is a dumb society that we've created, isn't it?
It is.
And so, I'll just take it. It's all called a prison. And so, but we end up getting married, getting mortgages, maybe having children. Now, all of a sudden we have debt, we need security, and look at the conflict. So at the very same time that we want to take off, we then get into the societal norms that then pull us back down. And I often, when I'm working with companies, big organizations, and they're in a creative space, especially if they've got a low staff turnover, like a low churn in that creativity sector, it's usually because the creative people have stayed too long, not too long, but they've stayed and they've moved into their 28, 35, 35, 42. And so they've stopped being edgy and risky. Yeah. So their product becomes more boring. And so you've got to do work to help them get back into that creative space. Okay. So are there any questions around the 28 to 35?
No, I definitely it just rings so true. And
beautiful.
Yeah, this is why I really wanted to share this with the listeners, hoping that some people out there could get a bit of a better relationship with themselves, a better understanding of themselves wherever they're at.
I've got to say, the more you, and this is just one of hundreds, like I'm doing it. Oh, here we go. If you're in Sydney. So I'm doing, and this is my first sort of public program with Ignite, even though it's the same, like I've run programs and I've delivered in front of over 500,000 people. So it's not like but in a training room, a facilitation of people's learning, there's probably over 100,000 people. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at all of the different modalities that we use or that we can have insight into that give us understanding of self. The more I understand myself and try that on for size, like I try everything on for size. I'm grateful to my past and the insecurity that came with that and the self-doubt. And I mean, I was a tortured soul for a lot of years, but I love it because you could say to me, you're whatever. I'm just trying to think of something, you look like a banana. I would try that on for size because I would think, oh, well, they probably know me better than I do. So I tried on for size. Someone just told me just recently, that you can be quite rigid in my thinking. And I go, yeah, I would agree with you. If I'm speaking to someone who has absolutely no idea about what we're talking about, I am so rigid. The trouble is, most of the people that I'm talking to that think I'm rigid are so arrogantly and egoically attached to what they think they know. They don't even know that they don't know. And I call that unconscious arrogance. You don't know that you don't know, but you act as if you do know.
Yes, I feel like so many people suffer with that unconscious arrogance.
Oh gosh, yes. But what I did was afterwards I tried it on for size. This was only a couple of months ago. I tried it on for size and I went, wow, where else am I rigid? Am I rigid? And do I hold on too tightly? So I had to really put myself through that as well. Now, what I would like, I hope to think at my age as well, especially having done the work, is that I will try everything on for size. And if it makes sense for me, I will move. I will shift in a heartbeat, and I just wish we were more like this in the world. Like your intuition, that's your wiser part, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You just know that higher, wiser part of you that we all do this. We throw it up there, don't we? We go, gosh, I wonder what I'm going to do about blah, blah, blah. Sure enough, you're out the back doing the gardening. Boom, there it is. Isn't it 2 days later? There's the answer.
Yeah.
Anyway, so 28 to 35. So I just go see, and then if you're a couple, do a values elicitation. So this is Claire Graves' work. And just Google values elicitation, Claire Graves, CLAR. I think it's a couple of women in Melbourne that actually, I can't remember their names. It's a special elicitation where you actually can elicit what your true values are. Now, when you can elicit your true values, now let's just say, Shaun, what's your partner's name?
Benny.
Let's just say Benny is all about security. One of his highest values is security. One of my highest values is learning. Is that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is even over love for me. If I don't learn, I die. And fun. So if I can't have fun while I'm learning, now doesn't that make sense when you see me as a facilitator?
Yep, 100%.
Yeah? And I have to learn while I'm teaching. So I'm a learn, teach, learn. That's a flow of, the process. Now, let's just say Benny is all about security. That's a value, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And let's say you're all about excitement.
Yeah.
And risk. Can you see straight away, if you didn't know that, you will go through the honeymoon stage of the relationship. You will fall in love. You will have this love for each other. And then something significant will come up in your life. He'll want to buy a house. You'll want to go traveling around the world and live out of a backpack. He'll be going, well, what'll happen at the end of it? We would have had no money. And you'll be going, but who cares? Well, what about all beautiful life experiences? When you can understand each other's values, then you can manage those values together. Does that make sense?
It does. It really, really does. So, and I love it. That's a great analogy. And I love it when you sort of personalize it like that too.
Yeah. Benny's probably the one that jumps out of a plane and you're saying, no, stay here.
Yeah, he'd be more likely to be that one.
There you go. So 28 to 35. So we love that. 35 to 42, like I said, now you've got a bit of maturity coming about you. 35, you really are quite settled into who you are. And you're just head down, bum up, really. This is when people work long hours. If you've got young children, maybe think about it. Or often when you see parents who they become parents the second time round, they'll say, I regret all of the time I stayed away from my children when they were little. And so 35, 42, you're just polishing. Again, like I said, power years, you're really building your bank of ability. You're climbing that corporate ladder if that's what you're in. And then, of course, 42 hits. 42. And what happens at 42? All of a sudden, you go, what the hell is happening to my life? You become disillusioned. And the 7-year cycle from 42 to 49 is actually disillusionment. So the reason is because by the time you're about 44, you've experienced all the emotions you're ever going to experience. And so what else is there? Now, a lot of us don't actually have any awareness around this, like I said. And we were talking about this with someone the other day, and I said, 2 people who enter a relationship and have little self-awareness, it's like 2 toddlers running around with very sharp knives. Both are going to get very hurt and they won't know why. They'll just blame the other person. Yeah. So when you hit 42, 43, around there, you've usually, like I said, experienced all those emotions. And now what else is there? So the brain's going, well, where's my hit going to come from? So that's when a lot of people who are unaware go out and have affairs. They'll go out and buy a, Maserati. They'll go and do some sabbatical and, walk for 500 miles across the Sahara, whatever it might be. Yeah. And that's okay to do that. But if we paused and went, and the Commonwealth Bank, I remember I was splitting up with my husband at this time. I was about 44. And I remember I was driving home one time and the Commonwealth Bank had an ad. Talk about marketing. I don't know whether they knew this or not, but they nailed it. It said, at 42, I'll start again. And I was like, whether they've done the stats that most people break up around this time, who knows? And so when you start to hit that, and I had a beautiful friend of mine just recently get counsel from me, and I've known her for years, and she's a dynamic senior leader of, multinational global company. And she was feeling really disillusioned. And she said, look, I feel like I need to start my own company or do something on my own. And I said, I feel like you got another gig in you. I just felt like she wasn't ready yet. And I said, you're only a baby. And she laughed. And I said, love. So I took her through the 7-year cycles. And I went, this is 42. She's 42. She goes, oh my God. Like blew her brains out. And I said, get smart in this 7-year cycle. Do the work in this 7-year cycle. Like, yes, you're not going to be that excited, but, you're going to be disillusioned, but then tick it off and go, right, what am I unhappy with? Because this is what happens at 28. Someone just recently, and I'm so careful on this because everyone thinks it's about them. I did a thing on ghosting on social media just recently.
Yes, I saw that. It was,
did you like it?
I loved it. I thought another one of those things, it just rings so true and people don't talk about it. So I'm glad you did.
Well, you wait, I've got a few more coming out. But it's so interesting. I had so many friends go, was that about me? And I'm like, no, I love you, but at least we're connected. So I'm very conscious of what I say on these things because I don't want, a lot of people know me and then they'll get paranoid about it. I go, if you're not willing to actually receive feedback, and it's really hard for someone to give it to you, I won't waste my breath. Yeah. So I just go, if you're going to be in my circle and I have to work that hard to get you to bring you to a realm of self-awareness, I don't have enough. I'm on the other side of the mountain now. So I don't have enough years to waste, spending 5 years educating someone on their own self-awareness. And so 42, sit in it. Start to make notes, become awareness, go, wow, you know what? I've never really actually liked doing that. And you know what, and start to try, go back to 28 again and start to try a bunch of whole different things. So it's the 7-year cycle of disillusionment, but it's also the 7-year cycle of really developing true intuition. Now, it blows my mind how many people think they're intuitive. You know, like they'll be 25, they go, oh, I'm intuitive. I go, oh, love, that's your ego talking again. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think also 21 to 28 want to show you that they're getting it right. So they don't drop into vulnerable curiosity.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Vulnerable curiosity. So just sit in that space of be with your partner. If they're driving you up the wall, bring it in. Bring it in first to self, then come out to others. But the trouble is we go out to others before we bring it in, don't we?
We do.
I'll make you responsible for my unhappiness. I'll make you responsible for the fact that we're not financially stable. I'll make you, instead of going, if you want to see yourself, just be in a relationship with someone. And that can be at work, it can be intimately, it can be anything. And so just start to journal, just start to work out, whatever it looks like, yeah? But we develop our intuition. We develop, because why? Because now you've got all the emotion. Doesn't make sense? You've done the journey of life. And so now you can sit there and go, now I also do the broomstick theory. I don't have a ruler in front of me here. I've just got back. I've just got back from, I have to do it. And I know some of you are doing this on audio, but I've got because we're going to take some sound bites out of this.
Yeah.
But I do the broomstick theory. So I've got a ruler in front of me. And so intuition, I've always been highly intuitive. Yeah. So, and I've never trusted it. When I was younger, I didn't have any clue. And I'll tell you, look at this. So even though I had it in me, my insecurity and lack of self-awareness made me paranoid. That's the other end of the broomstick. So paranoia and intuition are opposite ends of the broomstick. See that?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you have to understand yourself, and you have to have a bank full of emotional and life experiences to draw from, so you can be discerning on whether it's paranoia or intuition. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
Okay, great. And so, people go, I just felt it. Like I met him at the bar. We'd had 5 cocktails and I just intuitively felt like it's going to be my life partner. And it's like, that's not your intuition at all. Yeah. That's your paranoia that you're going to be left on the shelf. Or maybe, whatever. I'm glad you're laughing. Okay. So, because it was a joke. So we start to develop your intuition. So 42, 49. When you reach 49 then becomes, if you have done the work, ego maturity. So you are becoming mature around your ego. You drop into grace, I wrote a little book around, it's called My Neglected Friends. And the 3 greatest things that we can gather in life are curiosity, grace, and humility. They're 3 great friends. And so hopefully by the time you've reached 49, 50, you've got a bit of grace about you. You've got some humility because you've really hit some hard times in your life. You've hurt, you've suffered, you've grieved, you've pained, you've loved, you've lost, you've been joyful, you've been sad, you've been, all of those emotions come together to show you about humanity. And so 49 to 56 is now you're starting to think about your legacy. Yeah. And so, I'm just making sure that, so this legacy, you're starting to think about, you're starting to ask questions like, well, what do I want? What impact do I want to leave? Or, and now when you do the Claire Graves work, you're also coming out of, or into, I should say, an entrepreneurial but altruistic age. I do want to make an impact on the planet, but I do want to also, get the rewards of that, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then 56, 63 is about really hunkering down with your legacy. And really legacy, impact, giving back, all those sort of things continues on then until you're about 84.
Wow.
Then you start again. Yeah.
Then you start again, jumping out of planes.
Exactly.
I love it. It's, as I say, I just find it so fascinating because we're all on this journey, like we're all on this planet together, and everybody goes through similar feelings. Like everybody, as you say, by the time you get to a certain age, everybody's felt grief and loss and happiness and, all of the feelings that it just makes sense to me that we would want to I guess this is a part of, like, I may be doing the work, but it makes sense to me that we would want to learn about ourselves, because it's a quote that keeps coming up in my life at the minute, and it's, it's a little cheesy, but I like it. It's true. The most important and the hardest relationship you'll ever have in your life is the one that you have with yourself. So that, I guess, is my own little mantra going into 37 at the moment. It's, we've been through a heck of a couple of years. To give you some insight, so when you and I first worked together over a year ago, I was getting ready to get married. I was 35. Benny would have been 42. And yeah, and so after the wedding, I think as well, being such a big life moment personally, I think Benny probably did start to get to that point of questioning what is not necessarily what is right or wrong, but what is right or wrong for him, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. How does he want to be treated by people in his life, by, people he works with or works for, family members, all of that. And I think that sort of led him to what would be typically known as the midlife crisis. And for him, that was very much, I guess, identifying and learning his own mental health, I guess, not abilities, but, society-wise, working with people who don't treat you correctly, or looking back at your family history and going, this was a great moment and this was not, and how has that impacted me and turned me into this 42-year-old person. I just found it so fascinating. And
I'm taking notes.
That's cool. And right when you were talking about that in our trainings, I was living it. I was watching the man I love, the man I just married, go through this, what was actually a really troubling time. And then the impacts that's had professionally and personally for him, and then personally for us as our relationship. It's been one hell of a journey. But what I can really gladly say is that he really stopped, lived in it, is still living in it, but he's done the work. And
doing the work.
Yeah, he's doing the work, exactly. And I couldn't be prouder of him, couldn't be more proud.
Because the thing is, which is just beautiful, because this is the hard thing about relationships, I think, is that we're not like, it's mainly unconscious, but we seek out relationships to give ourselves security. Yet you can climb into bed some nights and be lying beside a stranger and you can't reach them. You can hug them and you can't reach them. And so, and that's that willingness. It's like being a parent, allowing your children to have their own journey. And because I always love this story about Jackson and I, and how, Jackson and I are very, very similar. And I won't go into the whole details of it. And this was, so he was coming out, so he was 14 to 21, coming about 18, 19 or something. And I ended up saying, you're going back to your father's. Like, I'm sending you home. And wait, I won't do any sarcastic little comments. Like, when it's live, it's not recorded, you see, you can't play it. But I won't tell you what I said, it's about time. Anyway, there we go. And so he didn't get on the plane. So I had some conditions about living with me, and that was, speak to me properly, or treat me with respect, get a job, clean the dog poo on the balcony, whatever. And so to me, in my experience, they were very nominal expectations. For him, and I also was getting concerned about him because he was in the 14 to 21 age group. He had finished school. America, he wasn't going, I can't remember whether he'd finished. Yeah, so he'd finished school. America is very judgmental when it comes to, education and going to college. It's ridiculous, because the whole, you look at all that whole creative sector, we don't cater for them. There's an amazing movie called, there's a new trait, and it's not a temperament trait, it's a trait called highly sensitive person, HSP. It's just been discovered. And And the movie is called, or the documentary is called Sensitive, The Untold Story. And they use Alanis Morissette as an example. Oh, it's just phenomenal. And there's 20% of the population that sit there, and they usually are creative people. Now, you take those creative people who, they get, anyway, I won't even go into it. That's another whole podcast. But I sent him back to Australia. He didn't get on the plane. He got a job, the whole thing. We end up finding our way back to each other. And then he would say to me, wake me up at night, and he'd been out with his friends or whatever, and he'd wake me up upset, and he'd go, why did you not say sorry for throwing me out? You never said sorry. And I'd be like, sorry, me, why? I can't believe. It became this typical transactional analysis parent-child. Mm-hmm. And that happens so often. And then one time he said to me, when we were fighting, I used to listen to the song Ozzy Osbourne, Mama, I'm Coming Home. And I had never heard of it. And I played it, and I'm in the car. And the first time I play it, I'm angry. I'm like, I'm listening to the words, but I'm listening to the words through my own experience. Mm-hmm. People think they're empathic. It blows my mind. Or they say they're empaths. And I go, oh my God, we're so self-righteous, aren't we? Now, highly sensitive people will pick up energies. But I was so angry because it was like, what about me? And you don't know what it was like for me. And I was doing everything for you and this, that, and the other, Second time, it still hurt. Like I was still like angry. And then the third time I thought I'm going to make a decision. And I decided that I was going to try it on for size. So I listened to it. I took myself out of the picture, out of the experience. And I imagined that I was Jackson. I imagined that I was 18. I was hurting. I was living in America. My best friend was in Australia. My father was in Australia. I felt lonely. My mother had to leave me at, whatever, since the moment we arrived in America to end up going back to Australia to get the work because I, wasn't making money here. And I bawled my eyes out. I just gutturally sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. I couldn't play it I must have had to play it like a dozen times before I stopped crying. And I felt what it was like to be in his experience, And I think when your cup's empty, it's hard to sit in the space of another person. Like, we can be we listen to it for ourselves, or we listen to it and we go, well, I'm there and I've done that. And we go, no, I always go, no, we're all doing the dance, It's just a circle. That's all. It's hard for everybody. And my hope is that we can drop into that sensitivity long enough to go, I've got one of my new, it's a leadership model that I've created called serve forward, lean back. And so rarely do we serve forward to others, to truly hold the space for another person. And rarely can we lean back knowing 100% that person behind me has got my back. So your beautiful partner probably came to a place where it was like, I have boundaries now. I'm making decisions around how I'm going to treat myself and how I'm going to treat others and how you're going to treat me. And some people don't like that, So, yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, I love this stuff.
It's amazing. Well, Terry, I think that we've covered all of the 7-year cycles in the 7-year cycles.
In 7 minutes, 7-year cycles in 7 minutes.
Maybe we can turn that one into a reel and put it to like an edited down version of like quick sevens. Thank you so much for sharing your time and coming onto the show. I really, really do appreciate it. I know that you're busy, and we did have to work towards some time differences for this one because you're back in the States. And it is your birthday, so happy birthday!
Oh, thank you so much.
Put that up there. I hope you've had a good day. But yeah, thank you so much. Now. I'm really grateful for you coming on, sharing your expertise and your personal experiences as well. Thank you so much.
Well, you're just an incredible human being, Shaun, truly. So keep doing all the amazing work that you're doing.
Thank you. Well, guys, that's a wrap for this week. A huge, huge thank you to Terry for taking the time to come on the show and sharing the 7-year cycles with all of us. I hope that you all found this topic as interesting as I do. If you want to know more about Terry and her new venture, Ignite Worldwide, then you can follow Terry on Instagram at Ignite Worldwide 2022. That link, along with Terry's website and socials, is going to be listed in the show notes for you. So go and give them a little click, a like, a follow. As for the show this week, that's all, folks. Look after yourselves, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.